Gospel. I'm in Mark. Oops. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 10, beginning with verse 1. Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to cure every disease and every sickness. And these are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, also known as Peter, and his brother Andrew, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanite, Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. You received without payment, give without payment. Take no gold or silver or copper in your belts, no bag for your journey, or 2 tunics or sandals or a staff, for laborers deserve their food. Whatever town or village you enter, find out who in it is worthy, and stay there until you leave. As you enter the house, greet it. If the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave that house or town. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly, I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. Thus ends the reading of the word. Have you ever met someone? It could be someone sitting with you in the church. It could even be you, as a matter of fact, who speaks about an experience they have had which caused them to leave a church they were attending. No? Perhaps they got fed up with the politics, or people vying for positions of influence or control, or they no longer felt welcome, or the minister didn't preach the word the way they'd like to hear it preached, or the church just wasn't singing those old hymns that brought a sense of peace to your heart and soul. It could be that you or that individual sitting next to you felt that they no longer recognized anybody, that all the faces were new and unfamiliar, and they dressed funny, and they talked funny, or they looked different from you. They just weren't the comfortable, familiar faces you've known for years. It may be that you or this person sitting next to you felt the church they left had lost its sense of purpose, and they are searching for a church that knows what it is supposed to be about or do. If this describes you or the person sitting next to you, the thing that is important is that you/they are here. You are in church, looking for a fresh experience, a purposeful experience. You may be church shopping. Some are coming from places far away, hoping to find the right fit again. Others are looking for that church that makes them feel good about themselves, validated as a human being, connected and correct in their relationship with God. On the other hand, some folks have no real idea what the church is supposed to be for them or anyone else. Some folks have been attending church all of their lives and still have no idea what it's supposed to be about. For some, it is the place where they look for comfort and support, that shoring up place to call their own. For others, the church is supposed to be a place that works to change the world in the direction of their particular political agenda. That's funny. Oh, maybe not. Is it true? Is Matthew, as Matthew writes his gospel, and in particular this passage, he has written of the synagogues as a place to share the good news. Jesus preached in the synagogues, we know, and so did Paul. The early Christians were thrown out of many of those same synagogues when the Pharisees or the Sadducees didn't approve of their message. The book of Acts tells us that some stories about how the disciples of the crucified Jesus were treated when they went out to preach the gospel message. The stoning of Stephen in Acts chapter 8 is one of the most graphic examples. Acts tells us, too, that the missionary disciples/apostles didn't always get along. Paul and Peter butted heads for a good chunk of their apostolic careers. Paul and Barnabas, who were sidekicks for a time for the sake of the gospel, had a parting of the ways. If those folks, the holiest first missionaries, had a tough time seeing eye to eye and getting along in the cause of the gospel, why should we be surprised if we disagree? What is important is that they kept to their purpose. They kept to their purpose. They didn't just throw up their hands and say, I will not spread the message of love anymore. They didn't just wash their hands of Jesus and the good news. They didn't just wash their hands of each other. They pushed aside their egos and their obsessions and concentrated on their purpose, which was simply to introduce everyone they met to the unfathomable wonder and love of God. People experience turmoil in all sorts of ways and places. The church is one of them. We have this expectation that the church's principles, ideas, and mores reflect the society which we were raised in, that they are the same. We imagine that God's commandment to love one another even as I have loved you goes only as far as the majority dictates. The purpose of the church, however, is to teach us how to live up to the commandments of God. Some of us have this expectation that the church is a place where there is to be no upheaval, no turmoil, no stress or strain, no misunderstandings, and that it is supposed to be a place of peace and tranquility and comfort. I agree that the church should be a place where we can find peace, but I believe more that it is meant to be a place of constant growing, challenging ourselves and each other to live out our common purpose. Here is where we are to learn how to work through differences of opinion in safety, with the assurance that as we do, the Christ will be in our midst and we will be better for our work. We are always working to identify the places where we can and need to live out our purpose. Those who come to church like the disciples who gathered around Jesus seek to discover purpose here. It is not my job to identify that for you or to carry out that purpose for you. You hired me to help renew your purpose, revive your purpose, and rediscover your purpose. Once discovered, you, must take it out into the world. You, must live in a variety of contexts. The church is a place to ask God what work we will do in the name of Jesus. How is it that our lives will reflect the gospel? How will the light that shines within us further Christ's Methodist's mission here on earth? How will the living of our own lives ultimately glorify God? This is what we seek to learn as members of a church. You may say that sounds like a tall order. Some of you may be saying, if that is what is expected of members of the church, I think I will stay a permanent visitor or an anonymous guest. That is indeed understandable. I know. The minute I joined a United Methodist church, they asked me to direct the youth group in a production of Godspell. They were great, by the way. And when I was done with that, they asked me to chair the finance committee. Now some of you are rolling your eyes and stop it right now. If you join Rotary or Kiwanis or the Elks or the Masons or even the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts, there are duties that come with membership. I have met people who are more passionate about the purpose of their Lions Club, their Kiwanis and Scouts than they are about the purpose of the church where they hold their membership. Yes. Like those other organizations, the minute you join a church, you are going to be asked to do something. Duh. And that is as it should be. When Jesus' disciples followed him, according to Matthew, Jesus didn't spend any time worrying about slighting the disciples. He didn't treat them with kid gloves for fear they would leave or stop supporting the ministry the moment they didn't like what he asked them to do. They had followed because they wanted to fulfill his purpose. The church is not a theological vending machine where you insert a few dollars in the plate in exchange for some words of wisdom, some intellectual stimulation, and some really good snacks at the coffee hour. It is not a movie theater or a venue for concerts. It is not a gospel spa where folks come when they feel like it and feel the need. And neither can church be just the coolest place to go or something to do on Sunday morning before you go to brunch. Here must be where we search out and find our Christian purpose. Here is where we identify our passion and carry it with us out into the world. Here is where we identify our passion and carry it with us out into the world, sharing it, putting it into action. When I say out into the world, I'm not talking about standing on street corners passing out tracts. I'm talking about the simplest things. I'm talking about the simplest behaviors, the behaviors of welcome, hospitality, and receptiveness. In Matthew chapter 10, the 12 named disciples are about to be sent out 2 by 2, kind of like a Noah's Ark in reverse, to proclaim the good news to the lost sheep, not the hiding sheep. The lost sheep. It's not so complicated. He said, go out there, cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. They don't carry with them a service manual, only the power given to them by their association with Jesus, who called them in the first place. In verses 40 through 42, he tells the disciples they will be rewarded for living out their purpose. According to Dick Donovan's commentary on this passage, he explains that the words "in the name of," which appear 3 times in this text, "in the name of," is a Semitic phrase meaning because one is. So I'm going to read these verses again to you with that slight change. Here goes. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet because he or she is a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. Whoever welcomes a righteous person because he or she is a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives a cup of cold water to one of these little ones because they are a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward. The words welcome and receive are used interchangeably in this text, and one wonders if Matthew's Jesus is talking to the disciples or a wider audience. There is a Jewish proverb that reads, "Hospitality is a form of worship." Don't you want to just put that on your door? Hospitality is a form of worship. Some of you may be saying to yourselves, I didn't sign on to be a missionary. I didn't sign on to be an evangelist. But just listen just a bit more. I know this is long. It's so much simpler than we are imagining. Even the minimum effort, even the minimum teensiest, tiniest, little itsy bitsy effort gleans a reward. How many of you are parents? How many of you have children? How many of you sent those children off to college? Did you go with them? Did you pack your bags and say, honey, I am moving into the dorm with you because I want you to be sure that you're going to be all right? I'm sure my parents were nervous every time they packed up one of us to go off to school. It began for me when I was 15. They weren't too worried about me when I'm sure, because the school kept a very close eye on us, and it was located in a college town. The next leaving was to Vermont, in an even tinier town. And there I am sure my parents believed that there wasn't too much to worry about, and that I wouldn't have too much of a chance to get into trouble. Well, even if we were only a 2-mile walk from the New York State border, which at the time had a drinking age of 18. But I'm sure they weren't worried. There was always the possibility of trouble, but the school kept a pretty close eye on us. And my parents never knew about the time I hitchhiked with 4 other girls from the middle of Vermont to Rochester, New York. Well, we were on a mission to see Niagara Falls. One of the girls lived in that neck of the New York woods, so when we arrived at her house, her parents received us with shocked faces and worried looks. And when it came time for us to return to school, they bought us bus tickets. My next backing up was to New York City, the Upper West Side of Manhattan, to the School of Nursing. I am sure that my mother and father were praying that if I was ever in need or lost, that a stranger would offer me, or even offer me help, or even something as simple as a subway token if I needed it. Had they been aware of some of the things I did, they would have been on their knees constantly. I babysat from time to time for extra money at the home of folks who lived on the east side of the city. And I rode the subway, having to switch lines halfway through the 45-minute trip to and from their apartment. I often found myself riding the subway back to the Upper West Side at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Brilliant. 165th Street and Broadway. Just to give you an idea of where that was in the city, about the only way one could get a cab driver to drive you there from LaGuardia Airport was to get into the cab, shut the door, and tell the driver where you wanted to go. Once you were in the cab, they couldn't refuse you. When I went to Columbia, South America, I was just 23. My parents worried and could only hope that someone would welcome me as emissary, as an ambassador of goodwill from the United States. They hoped someone would take care of me there, would protect me or help me if I was in trouble or in danger. There were those who received us, received me, and there were those who mistrusted us and thought we worked for the CIA. But in Colombia, in the raw and remote places of that country, a law of hospitality was observed like none I had ever seen or experienced in my life. If you arrived at someone's door, you were offered food and shelter. As simple as that. Matthew's Jesus knows that the world is full of people who have the choice and capability to welcome, to receive, or to reject and exclude. He is clear to say that those who welcome, receive, and care for a person because he or she is a prophet, because he or she is a righteous person, or because he or she is a disciple of Jesus, will be rewarded. Receiving someone, welcoming someone is a simple thing. It is a gift. It is an act of worship. Every act of kindness, not done for self-gain or self-aggrandizement, but because we want to give a gift. Every gesture of welcome or reception we offer, every smile, every kind word, every moment of forgiveness is an act of worship and welcomes the presence of God, welcomes the presence of Jesus. It is a first step in living out our purpose. The next steps are a bit more advanced, such as, well, forgiving, which is not the same as ignoring or having nothing to do with. Or not trading evil for evil, that is not hitting back when somebody hits you, which is a reflex. And doing no harm, which is, well, that is thinking about how every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I guess if we keep ourselves busy receiving people, welcoming people, from prophets to neophyte disciples, we won't have the time or the energy to judge the rudeness of the person who stole our parking place, or the thoughtless person who cuts in front of us in line, or the individual who shuns us in public. If we are about welcoming and receiving, we are not trading evil for evil, and we are not taking our necessary steps toward. We are taking our necessary steps toward holiness. Can you rewind that? We are taking our necessary steps toward fulfilling our Christian purpose. Every moment of patience we muster with an impatient client, or a thoughtless neighbor, or a recalcitrant child, or a recalcitrant grandchild, or a recalcitrant parent, is a step toward fulfilling our Christian purpose. The Christ encourages us to let His light shine in us, to allow our pride to give up needing to be right, to relax, to receive, to revive our life through the simplicity of receiving and welcoming, offering that cup of cold water, even to the little ones. I will leave you with the most profound image that lingers in my mind's eye 52 years after I first saw it on the big screen. It is that scene where Charlton Heston, as Judah Ben-Hur, is trudging through the Judean desert in chains, headed to the sea to serve his sentence as a galley slave to the Romans. He collapses, exhausted, dying of thirst. He tries to take a drink of water from the well where the chain gang has stopped, and the water is hit out of his hand by an unrelenting and cruel Roman soldier. Suddenly, all we see are a pair of hands holding out a gourd of fresh, cool water for Ben-Hur to drink. We see on his face an expression of wonder and of love for the one who has shown him such compassion. The Roman soldier lifts his hand to strike the gourd and the person who offers Judah Ben-Hur the water. But quite suddenly, he backs away ashamed. We know that the hands that offer the cup of cool water to the prisoner Ben-Hur are the hands of Jesus. Interestingly enough, the name of the actor who played the role of Jesus never appeared in the film credits. I find that theologically significant, and perhaps as it should be. Amen.